Yeah, this is exactly how it is. A typical day in the Coast Guard. This is exactly the kind of stuff we do. Hey there, crew member, Sailor Vince here, and today we're gonna tackle a movie not just about navigation, but about the Coast Guard itself. The finest hour. I'm really looking forward to jump into it. By the way, this request was done by Marie LG. Thank you very much. So, without further ado, let's jump right into it. Okay, so there's a lot to unpack here. So it may seem far-fetched when you see that, but it's actually possible. In fact, throughout history, many boats have split in half. When we calculate all the stability factors of a ship, we often check where the center of gravity is located, and also where the center of buoyancy is. Basically, the center of buoyancy is where the water pushes back your ship so that it can float. The more these 2 points are apart, the more stress it puts on the structure, especially during heavy weather. Also during World War II and even after World War II, boats were mass-produced, and unfortunately quantity was put before quality. Now, a clean cut like that is very unusual. From the pictures that I looked online, it's a lot messier when it happens. But I guess it's easier for a CGI team in this movie. Another interesting part to look at is the fact that the superstructure is located in the front rather than the back, which adds a lot more weight to it. So I would say that is mostly why the front of the ship sank first while the back was still floating.
Alright, you guys, now pull!
Wait, what? So in this scene, the engineers are trying to put together a crazy setup, MacGyver style, to basically be able to angle the rudder by hands? But the thing is, there's already supposed to be an emergency steering wheel in the engine room. So in case you lose control of the steering gear in the bridge, or in this case, if you don't have a bridge anymore, then you can still steer a ship from the engine room. Granted, that's really not ideal. The wheel doesn't respond very well. Takes more than 40 turns just to get a few degrees port to starboard. This is a very tiring job that requires more than one man. Now, maybe this boat in particular didn't have an emergency steering wheel because it wasn't required back in those days, but even then, I visited some pretty old boats and they also had one, so I seriously doubt this one in particular didn't have one.
Last known position of the Pendleton is here. So I figure once we cross the bar, I reckon with the currents, she'll have drifted about here. That's 6 miles from us.
See, on a typical mission, we would never go cold like this. We would have at least some sort of a plan figured out. What kind of search pattern are we going to follow? On what coordinates do we start it? On which course are we going to start it? Do we have any idea what directions they're drifting and how much they're drifting? These are crucial elements that make a search and rescue mission effective or not. So I see that their boat is under 20 meters long, and according to the international collision regulation rules, they're supposed to have their side lights on, which I see them, so that's good. But what I don't see, however, is their master headlight, or it's basically a white light that you would see all around the ship. And no, the projector is not a substitute. Also here in Canada, we use a flashing blue light whenever we do a search and rescue operations. It's just to inform the ships around. In the US, they also have a flashing blue light, but from what I understood from their regulations, it is only used for law enforcement operations. The wave dynamic in this movie is completely wrong. So, the crescent waves that you typically see in surfing movies, they happen alongside the shore. When the water makes contact with the ground, it elevates it before it crashes down. But on open water, it follows a cycle which creates an amplitude movement. The water rises up, and its own mass pushes it down, which rises the water around it, and so on and so forth. The point is, unlike this movie, you wouldn't see in open water waves like that rushing towards you. They always follow an amplitude movement of up and down and up and down and up and down, and they can be equally dangerous because that makes them hard to predict.
Tide's rising! It'll get us through! Let me know what's coming!
kind of a Coast Guard officer would remove his life jacket during a storm? This is completely absurd. It's like a police officer removing his seatbelt during a car chase. This is something that we try really hard to promote in the Coast Guard. If you're on a small craft or a sailboat, wear your life jacket. It's for your safety. If you fall in the water, you drastically increase your chance of being saved. And it is required by the law, so do it. Oh, cool. So what he's actually doing here is called pacing the wave. Essentially, you go at 75% of your maximum speed, and when you're ready to tackle a wave, then you increase your speed to go up the crest, and once you reach the peak, then you slow down to prevent to get a jump and to smash your hull against the water. Another thing to keep in mind when doing a search and rescue mission, you always keep 25% of your speed in reserve in case you need to do an emergency maneuver.
Just listen to music, right? And 1, 2, 3, 1.
See, here personally, I would have followed up with a romantic declaration like, "You're the lighthouse of my night." Oh wait, I'm not supposed to reveal our love story, am I?
Gentlemen, brace yourselves. Hold on! Got it! Now!
So, I know they're desperately limited in their maneuvers, but usually when you want to go aground voluntarily, then what you do is you make your approach half speed, and once you make contact with the ground, then you increase your speed to get on it. Because otherwise, if you go too fast, then the impact will be too hard and you're just going to bounce off. Yeah, this is exactly how it is. A typical day in the Coast Guard. This is exactly the kind of stuff we do. Now, joke aside, what you saw there is probably the worst thing that could happen during your operation. When your nose goes first in the water, you don't just go into a submarine mode. You come into a crashing stop, which is probably going to push all your crew members out of the craft. And then when the craft will emerge, it will be capsized. And even if you manage to flip it back up, everything is flooded now. Your engine room is flooded, your electrical compartment is flooded, everything is flooded. You're in trouble. So, it's good that he has a lookout covering the front, but the two others, they should constantly be looking on the sides of the craft. See, one of the main reasons we do teams of 3 and 4 during a search and rescue operation is always to be able to cover all the areas around the craft. If the only place you're looking at is the front, you drastically reduce your chance of finding the missing person. This scene is very exaggerated, but the point is real. It is really hard to reach the side ladder of a boat when you have big waves around. I remember once I had to drive a fishery officer to a fishing vessel for a boarding operation, and it took me forever to safely get him to the ladder because of all the waves around.
Maybe we should just go back!
You heard bangs on the radio. We got no compass. We have no way to communicate. What?
Wait, hold on a second. So, I actually did some research online, and it is correct. Bernie Weber did continue a search and rescue mission, even though he lost both his compass and his radio. Basically, he was going completely blind. And I have to be honest, I am very conflicted about what to think of it. See, every time I saw my coworkers leave for a life and death situation, they're always entirely focused on saving those people. Never cared what the conditions were. They always showed pure selfishness. I know it sounds very cheesy, but I'm telling you, it's real. It's funny, you would think that you would be crippled by fear, but it's quite the opposite. You just stop listening to it. But see, the hardest part is when to admit that a situation is too dangerous. When the chances of success are so low and the risk of dying are too high, sometimes you have to pull off. See, my instructor used to tell us, if you completely neglect your own safety, then you're not gonna help anyone. Don't play the hero, don't make this tragedy even worse. I never made this call, not even close. But man, cannot imagine. Now, in this scenario, it ended with a happy ending, but it could have also ended badly. Here's an example. In 1989, Chief Officer Grigory Polpetel and 3 other of his crew members went to the aid of a group of buddy surfers trapped in a riptide. Very similar to this scenario, they had the sea conditions against them, but they decided to try it anyway. Well, a swell caused the boat to capsize, throwing all hands against the cliff. They all perished. But here, he did it. Weber went against all odds, did the impossible, and saved more than 30 men from a certain death. I can't really say if it was a professional decision, but I cannot deny that he is a true hero. Alright, so that was The Finest Hours. Way over-romanticized, but that doesn't mean it was all wrong. See, the facts were exaggerated, true, but they were there. Unfortunately, they also added a lot of stuff for theatricality and tension. So, in terms of realism, I would give it a score of 5.5 out of 10. But, would I recommend this movie? Absolutely! That movie was amazing, the special effects were incredible, I was on the edge the entire time. I think we just need to keep in mind that this is not representative of the Coast Guard or how a typical search and rescue mission goes. Thank you for watching. If you liked this video, make sure to leave a thumbs up and subscribe for extra content. And if you have a proposition of a video game or a movie you would like me to review, leave it in the comments section below. And as always, sail safe.